أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخزع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجة وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبه غافرا ولا لقبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء يقلت وكم من عسار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني النفع بعد أعمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي يا سيدي. فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفي آلي ولا تفزحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساتي ودوام تفريطي وجحالتي وكسرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رعوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي ومولاي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنذر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسأده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تكسيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مدعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وساقي يا رب ارحم زعف بدني وركة جلدي ودكة عظمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وربي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وصالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انتوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك وأتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضع لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تزيي من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من عاويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على حجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا وأشارت باستغفارك مدعنا ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم زعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها ألا أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكسو يسير بقاء قصير مدة فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجليل العقول المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقام ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستقيم يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها عزج وأبكي لعليم العذاب وشدتي أم لطول البلاء ومدتي فلئن سيرتني في العقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لعزيجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج العاملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين إليك بكاء الفاقدين ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين يا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيتي وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانا أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم زعفا أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا أم كيف تجزره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت بالموحدين من برك وإحساني فباليقين يقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتديا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستعون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل أملته كتمته أو أعلنت أخفيته أو أظهرت وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواري وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظ من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فزلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بزري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفخري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في ليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من عليه معول يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي بي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العزيمة جوانه وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وعسري إليك في المباردين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وعدنو منك ذنوب المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكيد واجعلني من أحسن أبيدك نسيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة من وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أسرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الحجاب فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكر شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافئ النقم يا نور المستغهشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد رحم الله سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil farajahum lana. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum. Please join me reciting Surah Al-Fatiha once, Surah Ikhlas 3 times for all Marhumeen, especially for the Shuhada of Gaza. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawm ad-Din. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Allahu as-samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Yulad wa lam yakul lahu ahad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu ahad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please join me also in reciting Dua Shafa 5 times for all Maris. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma yujibul musarra iza da'a wa yakshifu as-su. 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 Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil farajahum. Just one announcement on Saturday night, I think around 7:30, 8 p.m. The time is to be confirmed. There will be a Shahadat Majlis for the sons of Hazrat Muslim bin Aqil. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wajil farajahum. So the Shahadat Majlis for his sons will be on Saturday night. You will inshallah receive the poster with the exact timings via WhatsApp, and also the calendar for July will be sent I think Sunday or Monday coming up, so you should have the full calendar for July 2024, and that will also have the Muharram program timings and dates. Before I can invite Shaykh Ali Hadi forward, if I can ask all the brothers to come as far forward as possible with one loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحيات والإكرام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. صلوات. اللهم صل. It is the night of Jummah, Thursday night, a night to remember our Marhumeen and the souls that have left this dunya. And it is a night to also do tawassul to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam, as we have many riwayat that on Thursday night Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down angels towards Karbala, and one of the Zawar and the Zairin of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam is the mother of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, Hazrat Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha. Therefore this night is special every week. There is not a single Shab Jummah that is not special. The gathering of this night is special. Doing dua on this night is special. Doing istighfar, doing the ziyarah of our Imam is special. And remembering our Mawla, Imam al-Zaman, is also special tonight. The talk that I want to speak about today is the relationships, the sacred unions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed inside of this world. And what has the shaitan done to go ahead and attack these and plague them? If we have a look at the different types of relationships we have with inside of our life, we come to realize and understanding that certain unions are established with inside of our life that are sacred, they are muqaddas, and certain unions and relationships they're probably not sacred or muqaddas. For example, one relationship, the relationship between the mu'mineen and the community, right? For example, my relationship with all of the mu'mineen of the community is a sacred relationship. Why? It's a sacred relationship because it is a relationship or a union that is based on the wilayat of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. This is one relationship that I can give an example of. The second type of relationship that we have with inside of our life that's considered as sacred, muqaddas, that is the relationship between the husband and the wife. Especially because the relationship of a husband and a wife within inside of Islam is based on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a halal, lawful relationship. It is not a prohibited relationship. Rather, it's something that is blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it is a sacred relationship or a sacred union. Another type of sacred union is the relationship between the mu'mineen and the imam of his age. Because that relationship is also based on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, any relationship that is based on taqwa, based on iman, based on wilayat, it is considered as a sacred union. It is considered as a sacred relationship. But if we have a look, in the akhir al-zaman, our A'imma Athar alayhimus salam have warned us that there will come a time where there will be kathur al-talaq, kathur al-uquq. Right? There will be a time where talaq and divorce will be at a high rate. People will separate away from each other. Nobody would like to talk to each other anymore. The relationships will go dry and sour. And the shaitan, he will plague these relationships as much as he can. What do we see today in this dunya? We can see that the shaitan has definitely inflicted a lot of damage and harm upon our relationships. He has definitely inflicted harm upon the unity between certain unions, right? Specifically the husband and the wife, specifically the mu'mineen and the community, specifically the mu'mineen and the marja taqleed, specifically the mu'mineen and the alimadeen, right? This is something that the shaitan has done, and he has been successful because at the end of the day, the akhir al-zaman promises these things. This is the package that all of these things will come along with this package in the akhir al-zaman. Therefore, what is the solution to this, inshallah, will be the topic of my talk. What can we do to protect our relationships, these sacred ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed down for us inside of this dunya, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the deen of Islam, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has advised in many places to forgive and forget, to move along. Do not remember what happened in the past. To start off on a new page whenever you can. And do not keep grudges within inside of your heart. Rather continue on and try to remove and start on a fresh page. It's a religion of establishing peace. It's a religion of establishing aman, security. It's a religion that does not allow you to go ahead and violate somebody else's rights. Rather, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes sure that if you are acting within inside of this deen, if you are within inside of its parameters, you will definitely be the one who is establishing security, who is establishing peace within inside of the society. Deen Mubin Islam, dosti aur muhabbat ka aina hai. The deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a religion that is based on muhabbat, is based on love, is based on friendship. अगर देखा जाए तो हमारे दीन के अंदर रसूल ग्रामी इस्लाम सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम जब हम देखते हैं कि रसूलुल्लाह को जब पुकारते हैं तो कहते हैं रहमतुल लिल आलमीन, that he is the mercy of mankind, जब हम आइम्मा अतहार अलैहिस्सलाम को पुकारते हैं तो हम कहते हैं इमाम और रहमा, the Imam of mercy. Our holy prophet is the prophet of mercy. Our Imam is the Imam of mercy. Our Quran is the Quran of rahmat as well. Everything you see within inside of the deen of Islam is related to peace, is related to establishing security within inside of the dunya. And our deen, dear brothers and sisters, has no parallel in this dunya. There's no religion in this world that has a parallel to Islam, that comes even close to this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when it comes to love and peace, dear brothers and sisters, even if there's a war happening and you are a Muslim that is taking part in this, you are not allowed to attack little children. You are not allowed to attack the orphans. You are not allowed to kill the beggars. You are not allowed to go ahead and steal other people's properties and possessions. You are not allowed to restrict food and water upon your enemy. You are not allowed to go ahead and torture somebody within inside of this deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, the haqq of Allah, the deen of Allah states that even if you were to defend yourself within such a situation, you have to do so within the rights and in a respectful manner as well. This is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam stands for everything that is morally correct, and it stands against everything that is not morally correct. Even friendships that are with non-Muslims. For example, I have a friend that's a non-Muslim, say for example. I have to respect his rights of friendship similar to how I would respect my Muslim friend. I would respect the same rights as him. And also, if we do not have Muslim non-friends as well, if you have non-Muslim friends, we have to respect them as equal in human being. There's no way where I can say, because you are non-Muslim, I'm not going to be able to tolerate you to talk to me. I'm not going to be able to tolerate you to come over here and sit with me, for example. I'm not different to anybody else. And Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu salam, he tells us about that in one hadith which I will mention shortly. But if you have a look at the whole deen, different pillars, different angles, when you look at it from different perspectives, you realize that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is based on peace, is based on stability for the dunya, for a society to remain stable on its ground. Otherwise, without the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you realize that peace, stability, security will all come into disperse. If you would like to, for example, sacrifice and slaughter an animal, you have to make sure that the blade is sharp. You have to make sure that you give it water. You have to make sure that you have fed it. You have to make sure that you have took care of it. There's no torture happening to it. You have to make sure that you have done the dhikr of Allah. You have to make sure that you have respected it and honored it before you slaughter it. Although the animal does not have the choice between understanding what is going on. It does not have the choice between right and wrong. But when you are slaughtering it, you have to respect it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you to respect the nature, respect the plants, respect everything inside of this dunya. That is your duty as a Muslim. This is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we have a look at this deen now, on the contrary to the beliefs and the religions of other religions and other faiths, for example. Let's take Zionism, for example. Zionism states that because God has promised them a specific land, that this holy land only belongs to them, they are the chosen ones, they have the right over this land, and they are the only real human beings that live within inside of this land. Every single person outside of this faith, every single person outside of this deen, right, or they call them, Gentiles, right? They are all supposed to be killed at the lowest cost or removed at the least amount of difficulty from society. This is what is said within inside of the book of Talmud. If you search it up within inside of the book of Talmud, you'll see that within inside of Judaism, there is a part or a paragraph that will tell you within inside of the book of Talmud that people who are non-Jew, that live within inside of that specific area where God has promised them, they have to be removed immediately at the lowest cost, or they have to be killed. This is what it states in the book of Talmud. The point of me saying this is that this is clear racism. This is prejudice. This is racism against the entire dunya. That you state that only you are the real human beings, only you are the real people who are supposed to be enjoying the benefits of life. So In our religion, even the animals have rights, the plants have rights, right? The nature has rights. And our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he teaches that do not be cruel to the animal, do not be cruel to the miserly, do not be cruel to the orphan, rather be as kind as possible. The Holy Prophet of Islam taught us so many etiquettes, taught us so many manners. إِنِّي بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. The Holy Prophet says that I was sent down as a prophet of Allah to complete the manners in this dunya, to complete akhlaq in this dunya. This is the prophet of akhlaq. Therefore, this is our religion. This is our deen. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in Nahj al-Balagha, he sends a letter to Malik al-Ashtar. And he says, Ya Malik, you can find this in Nahj al-Balagha. He says, people are of two types in this dunya. When you are going to Misr, remember one thing from your Mawla. People are of two types. Imma akhun laka fid deen. They are either your brothers in faith. Wa imma nadhirun laka fil khalq. Or it's either they are equal inside of your creation. Do not differ between both of them. Do not think that because he is your brother in faith, he is better than the one who is not your brother in faith. Rather, they are either you equal in creation or they are your brother in your deen. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is saying to Malik Ashtar that every single creation in this world has its own rights. Therefore, this religion of Islam, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although it is a deen of peace, although it is a deen of friendship and love, it also has a part of the deen where it asks you to take a firm stance with inside of your life. But that's not the point that I want to get to. The point that I want to get to is this, that as the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promotes stability within inside of society, it urges peace and safety within inside of many places, within inside of all of the dunya. It asks also from those people who adhere to this religion to make sure that their deen is established within inside of their relationships. Otherwise, you'll find that the shaitan will come and plague these relationships. How so? We can see in the world today that the children whom once were supposed to be the ones who respected their elders, who were supposed to be the ones who honor their parents, who learn something from them, they are on the complete contrary to this today because of how they are being nurtured by social media, they're being nurtured by the internet. These are very, very important topics that need to be spoken about today. But the point that I want to get to into this majlis, dear brothers and sisters, is that what can we do so that we can make sure that we can help save these relationships within inside of our world, within inside of our life? We as Muslims, what duty do we have at the end of the day? We must have some sort of duty. Otherwise, if we are going to continue like this, then generations will continue on, and then one day you will find that our generations will be lost, and they won't be able to return back from any point. So these are supposed to be the topics that are supposed to be mentioned from the mimbar. And they should be the focal point of Muharram and Fatimiyya relationships, specifically the sacred relationships that we have within inside of our world. The relationship between a husband and a spouse, the relationship between the mu'min and the imam, the relationship between the mu'min and the mu'mineen of a community. All of these are under the direct attack of the shaitan. Why? They are under the direct attack of the shaitan, dear brothers and sisters, because once a mu'min, a person, becomes cut off from society, when he separates from his spouse, when he separates from his family members and he becomes alone, he will become more easier susceptible of attack from the shaitan himself, because he's in this lonely state, in comparison to him being with people, in comparison to him being with his spouse, in comparison to him being with his family. At the moment, if we have a look at the statistics within inside of the United Kingdom and check how loneliness is plaguing this country, how many Muslims live alone, where they have nobody to speak to, they have cut off from every single person. They've turned their mobile phones off. They don't want to talk to anybody. They do not want to come inside of society. And what are they currently going through? Are what we can find within inside of our deen. And when it tells us that once you do cut off from these sacred relationships, what happens? So therefore, we need to find a way to go ahead and stabilize these relationships. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to be firm and stand strong in those areas. But forgiveness and tolerance, dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if it comes to personal matters, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam have taught us that if it comes to personal matters, then you're supposed to look forward at forgiveness and tolerance. But when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the deen of Allah comes under direct attack, then tolerance and forgiveness have to be moved to the side, and the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be implemented. وَلَا تَأْخُذْ رَأْفَةً فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ. At the time where the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, after the Battle of Uhud, a lot of the prisoners had been sent to in front of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. And these were the mushrikeen who had killed many hundreds of Muslims in the Battle of Uhud and previously in the Battle of Badr as well. They came to say, Ya Rasulullah, what should we do at this point? The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, because he is the epicenter of the Quran itself, the epicenter of the ayah, وَلَا تَأْخُذْ رَأْفَةً فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ, that do not take a firm stance, do not make your heart soft for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to implementing the religion. At that point, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to do what he had to do, and he did what he did. وَلَا تَأْخُذْ رَأْفَةً فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ. In certain parts of the deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you to take a firm stance with inside of your life. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But if our deen told us to keep your grudges, if our deen told us to do not have tolerance with inside of your life, then what would the outcome, what would the picture look like? It would be very different. It would be completely like what we are doing today with inside of our societies. We see many times that with inside of our families, we have families that do not like to keep any sort of connection with other people. They do not show themselves. They like to stay separate. They do not like to keep a connection with one another. Somebody lives far away from their own family members because of a fight or because of a grudge, because of whatever happened with inside of their families. These unifications that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have placed inside of this world, they are sacred. They are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed down for a reason. If we have a look at the life of Mawla Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu salam, Allahumma salli ala. We say, Assalamu alayka ya awwal al-madhloom. We say, salam be upon the one who was the first mazloom in this world. Out of all of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, he's the first madhloom. Why is he the first madhloom? Because they usurped his rights. Not only did they usurp his rights, but he remained inside of his home for the next 15 years. And on top of that, they murdered Hazrat Zahra salamullah alayha. They took away his rights, and at the end he was the one to become shaheed after 4 years of caliphate. This dhulm that happened on Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, this was the dhulm that had happened on the deen of Islam. But Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam himself states in Nahj al-Balagha, verse number 73, he says, Wallahi لَأُسَلِّمَنَّ مَا سَلَمَتْ أُمُورِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ جَوْرٌ إِلَّا عَلَيَّ خَاصَّةً. He says that I swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will not say anything. I will stay quiet with what you have done for me, what you have done about me, as long as this zulm and violation took place on myself and not the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is stating that as long as you are doing dhulm upon me and not doing dhulm upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will not fight you back because of the circumstances. Now somebody may say that, okay, in the deen of Islam it asks you that do not accept dhulm. Yes, this is true. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam did not accept dhulm within inside of his life. Rather, at certain times you have to look at circumstances. You have to look at the circumstances of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. At the time, had Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, had he drawn the sword outside against the Khulafa, had he fought against them, he would have become victorious. He would have definitely become victorious even if he fought by himself. But the issue had come to this point, that had he fought against the Khulafa, at that time there was the threat from the Roman Empire to come and invade and to destroy Islam as a whole. There was a threat from people from within. Had Amir al-Mu'mineen had fought, today there would have been another 10 to 15 more sects had Amir al-Mu'mineen fought. So there were many things that Imam alayhi salam, he had thought about whilst during this time where his caliphate was usurped. Otherwise, we may say to ourselves, to our own, because we have an understanding which is futile towards the Imams alayhi salam, we may think to ourselves that Imam, he sat down at home and he accepted dhulm. Rather, Imam alayhi salam did not accept dhulm. Every single Imam, they live with inside of their lives under the circumstances that they live in. They have to do whatever which is within inside of their circumstances. Therefore, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he states, Wallahi la usallimanna ma salamat umur al-Muslimin. That as long as the umur of the Muslimin, they remain completely intact, I will not speak out against you. Illa, he says, illa alayya khasa. Illa, only if the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes under direct attack, I will not stand against you. So therefore, he continues on in this sermon. He says, فَصَبَرْتُ وَفِي الْعَيْنِ قَضًا وَفِي الْحَلْقِ شَجَعًا. That during this time I remained patient, and I saw the martyrdom of my wife, Hazrat Al-Zahra salamullah alayha. Allahumma salli ala. I remained very patient, and it was like as if the bone in my throat was stuck and I had a thorn within inside of my eye. This was the amount of time the sabr of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam had within inside of the time where his rights were usurped. But Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he tells us at the same time that when it comes to forgiveness and tolerance, that is something that you should keep within inside of your life, and it is also a condition towards your iman if you have this tolerance and forbearance within inside of your life. Now, for example, let's say if Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, who is the Imam of Haqq, the Imam of righteousness, we all believe that, don't we? We all believe that he is the Imam of Haqq, he is the Imam of righteousness. He was the one who stayed patient for the greater cause. The sentence that we usually hear within inside of our relationships is that it is your absolute right and you must take it. You must be the one who retrieves your right, because you have rights at the end of the day. Everybody's entitled to their own rights. If you do not retrieve your rights, you will be at loss. Even within inside of our own relationships, we think the same way as well. We think about our own rights. The one key factor that can save our relationships, the sacred unions between husband and a spouse, the sacred union between a mu'min and the community, the sacred relationship between a mu'min and the marja taqleed, the mu'min between Imam al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif. Allahumma salli ala. Is the simple word compromise. If we are able to compromise and meet in the middle, between the husband and the spouse, as long as you meet in the middle and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is at the top of the triangle, you are going to be successful within inside of your relationship. Between the mu'min and the community, if the common denominator or the compromising factor is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen of Allah, then you realize that the mu'min and the community will also come close to each other. At the same time, if the mu'min and Imam al-Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif, Allahumma salli ala. The mu'min meets the Imam halfway within inside of his own life. He constructs his personality around being that person who serves and is dedicated to the cause of the Imam. The Imam will meet him the other halfway. Compromise. But if I do not have compromise within inside of my own life between, for example, a husband and a spouse, a husband and his wife, for example, the husband says, from now on, from today, the wife says, from now on today, I'm not going to be the one who cleans the dishes. I'm not going to be the one who washes your clothes. I'm not going to be the one who takes care of the baby anymore. I'm not going to be the one who cleans the house every day. We live, it's not in my rights. I'm not supposed to be doing all of these things anyways. And just FYI for all of the brothers who are here, it is not within inside of the wajibat of a wife to be doing all of these matters. Rather, it's something that is mutual between the husband and the wife. And on top of that, let's say, for example, all of this happens, and then the husband says, okay, you know what? Since you are exercising your rights, it's time for me to exercise my rights as well. All of these day out trips, for example, going to central London, flying out to the country, going to different places, enjoying, buying things, from the mall or from the shops, we're going to close that down, and I'm going to exercise my rights from today. You realize how life will become so sour when one does not compromise, when one does not have this compromising factor between a relationship. When you cannot meet halfway with your spouse, life becomes ever much more sour. Therefore, our deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to keep your relationships healthy. Keep the sacred unions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's placed within inside of your life. Keep them healthy, keep them going, and keep the compromising factor, the common denominator, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا أولئك لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Dear brothers and sisters, mu'mineen who are present inside of this majlis, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you claim Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be your Lord, and you resist on this matter, and you make this the criteria of every single thing within inside of your life, your relationship, your job, your earning, your income, whatever it is, if you keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the epicenter of all of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. There's no fear and there's no sadness for that person. It's a promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the wa'ada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So therefore, at the end I would like to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has blessed us with multiple relationships. And if we think about it for a second, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us to be completely alone and cut off from the community, made us as people who did not have spouses to rely on, to speak to confide in, to seek solace in, then what kind of position would we have been in tomorrow? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with so many ni'mat, with so many matters, that if we ever start to count, we would not be able to count. إِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. It's not possible for you to count the ni'mat and the ni'mat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided you. And I would like to share a quick story before I end my majlis. I went to Ayatollah Sistani Hafadahullah in Najaf. I went to his office and we sat next to His Eminence, and we asked him a question about our duties as the students of Hawza Ilmiya and how can we go ahead and become successful in this path. Ayatollah Sistani, he said one thing that I will probably keep for the rest of my life. He says that every single morning when you wake up, you look in the mirror and count how many blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you within inside of this mirror. He says once you start to recognize the small ni'mat, once you start to have the ma'rifat of the small blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you, then you'll be able to realize the bigger ni'mat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you. But until you do not recognize these smaller ni'mat, until you do not have the ma'rifat of the smaller ni'mat that God has given to you, then how are you going to recognize the bigger ones? How are you going to appreciate the bigger ones? Therefore he says, before everything, do the shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do the shukr of Allah for all of the blessings that He has provided to you first, and then after that go ahead and look at the problems that you have. Otherwise sometimes we live in our life where we continue to look at our problems and the difficulties and the trials that we are going through, but we overlook all of the ni'mat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided to us. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. That if you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you thank His ni'mat, if you appreciate the blessings that He has given to you, not only just shukr zabani, doing thank of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your zaban, with your tongue, rather shukr amali, that I do not do kufran and ni'mat of the blessings that God has given to me. I do not take my ni'mat and blessings for guaranteed. Rather, I accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. I will extend my favor upon you once you utilize these ni'mat that I've provided to you. Relationships that we have, the alim-din with the community with the rest of the mu'mineen, the husband and his wife, the child and his parents, All of these are muqaddas and spiritual relationships provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, specifically for the mu'mineen, because they are based on the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, because they are based on the wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Therefore, the one key factor that we mentioned today that can help us preserve these sacred unions and establishments that God has provided to us is compromise. Compromise and making the common denominator and the factor as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As long as we keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the middle of the criteria of our lives, أُولَٰئِكَ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. The promise of God is that there will be no sorrow and there will be no sadness inside of your life. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Let us do a short tawassul to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, as it is Thursday night, the night that is recommended to do ziyarat of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Let us all recite together, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Hussein ibn Ali, أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله، يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا. For the faraj of Imam Zaman, يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب Take your Karbala tonight. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء، أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء، أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء، أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا الله بحق محمد وآل محمد بحق أبا عبد الله الحسين اطلبنا بجوارك يا أبا عبد الله. Oh Allah, we ask you for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, allow us to do the ziyarat of Karbala fi dunya. Ya Allah, بحق Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, allow us to receive the shafaat of Abu Abdullah in this dunya and the akhirah. Ya Allah, بحق Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, all of our maris, all of those who are ill who require dua, allow them all to heal for the sake of Abu Abdullah. Ya Allah, بحق Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, we seek you for the intercession of Imam Hussein. Allow us to see the nur of Imam al-Zaman. Ya Allah, بحق Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, forgive all of our sins on this Shab-e Jummah, and forgive all of our marhumeen and our marhumat. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة